Okay, welcome. This is Worldviews and Christianity. This is Faith Evangelical Seminary, and our topic is as big as it sounds. It's as big as the world. So I have some opening questions regarding worldviews. First of all, I have a statement. Obviously, the world has Christian people and non-Christian people. But along with that comes certain ramifications. Aren't there Christian ways and non-Christian ways? Like the way of salvation. There's the Christian way of salvation. There's the Islamic way of salvation. Okay, so we have different ways between Christian and non-Christian. Now, are there Christian ways that are distinct as opposed to non-Christian ways in areas outside of salvation? What about this? Is there a Christian way of farming as opposed to a non-Christian way of farming?
Let's see.
What do you think? Is there a New Age way of farming as opposed to Christian way of farming? There is. But have you ever thought about that? Isn't it normal to think that farming is just farming? That there's just one way to farm? Doesn't that sound typical? That, well, farming is farming. That you don't have ways of farming like Christian way or Buddhist way or Hindu way. It's just farming, right? But wrong. There is a New Age way of farming as opposed to a Christian way of farming. Or timber harvesting. Or non-timber harvesting. There's also a Christian way or a biblical way of business. You know, I had a student before who took a class, you're going to laugh at this, it's called Buddhist economics. But there is a Buddhist way of economics. Well, if there's a Buddhist way, there must be a Christian way, a biblical way. I've heard this many times. I have a hard time believing it. I've heard that the Bible talks more about money than any other topic. It's hard to believe, but I've heard that so many times it might be true. Is there a Christian way of doing entertainment as opposed to non-Christian? I hope so. Don't you? You know, you watch TV and you think, oh man, is there anything Christian on TV anymore with Christian values or biblical values? So that's an obvious category, that there's got to be, of course, a Christian biblical way to do entertainment as opposed to raunchy or non-Christian. There's a worldview, the raunchy worldview. Well, it exists, doesn't it? So this class is looking at things like that. Okay, now I want to give you definitions, okay, key definitions of how to define worldview. Find that the word worldview is defined in various ways, and they're usually all correct, but there's more than one way to define worldview. I'm going to give you 5 definitions. And by the way, I'm going to give you clues, like right now, as to what to study for your test. So I'll give you your handout shortly, and then I want you to mark on your handout that this will be a thing to focus on for your test. So before I give you the handout or I give you my definition, I want to hear what you think. Can someone please give me what you think is a definition of worldview? What does worldview mean to you? Definition. One at a time, please. I want order in this classroom. Pastor Henry, you kind of put it up for a second.
I wasn't sure about what I was going to tell you. I would think worldview is the world.
Okay, the world's view of how they look at life. Okay.
There's the worldview of life.
The world's view of
life.
X, Y, Z. Okay, that's one definition. That's good. What else?
World system. The world's system.
Okay, the world's system. The world's system. And of course, system would include X, Y, Z, so this is similar. You, sir.
The way that a person sees the world, its creation, and its purpose.
Okay, a person's perspective of the world. A person's perspective. Anybody else? Of various things. Anybody else?
Different ways to look at a particular thing.
Okay. The world's a big place. So in this big world, we have different ways of looking at things, different perspectives regarding X, Y, Z. Okay, let me give you your handout, and I have two that I think are key to the whole class. So here's your first handout. And you can have this electronically at the end of the week if you want it that way. But here's the hard copy of the first handout. And wherever these end up, can you please get the extras? Whoever gets these at the back there, please bring back the extras. Thank you. Boy, that looks good. You know, you get extra credit if you share with your teacher. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I see many of you have bought your book just while the paper's going out. I want to make a plug here. If I could use your book as a sample. Thank you. This book, I think, is just outstanding. I think it's a fun book. It's one of the best books I've ever read in my reading of Worldview books because it makes learning fun. I think you'll see what I mean when you start reading it. This is very well communicated with illustrations and good examples. So I think you'll enjoy this book very much. It'll make it really clear what a worldview is. And that smaller book, the paperback, is a classic. This has been out since the 70s. It keeps being revised and added to. Thank you. And so it gets better and better. And because it's always being revised, it's always being kept up to date. So this is an excellent book also. And each of these books looks at worldviews in a little bit different way. So that they're kind of complementary. So I really recommend you read both books like your assignments will show you to read. I think you'll be blessed to read those. They're both just some of the best books I've ever seen on this topic. Okay, look at your handout for your test. Here's a clue for your test. A broad as daylight clue. Focus on the first two definitions in the parenthesis 1 and 2. These are definitions that I think will be the heart and soul of our class. So what's the first one? View of the world. View of the world. And second one?
Worldviews.
Notice how I just changed the sentence around. A world of views. So just remember just remember one sentence and then reverse it. So if you start with a view of the world, then just do it backwards, a world of views. Because each of these are needed to capture the whole meaning of worldviews. You need to have both sides. So this side, a view of the world, means looking at the whole, looking at life as a whole, holistically, looking at the whole planet. For example, the average non-Christian American before recent times, let's say 20 years ago, before New Age became more popular, before Internet, before more intermingling of different cultures and different views, when America was more stereotypical not so aware of the world so much, but kind of self-contained. What was the main worldview of America, non-Christian America, maybe 20, 30 years ago?
Isolated.
Okay, kind of an isolationist. Okay, what else? What about in terms of spirituality?
Very grown.
I said that, but the non-Christian, the non-Christian segment. Humanistic, and what about spirituality? Was that very strong?
No.
What's the opposite?
Atheistic.
Okay, what's the opposite of spiritual? Okay, or physical. Okay, materialistic. Wouldn't you say that many Americans in history have been materialistic? At least since the 1800s, since Darwinism became known. So for the 20th century, perhaps we would say that a dominant worldview would be materialism. Okay. And materialism, is that part of the truth? Is part of reality material?
Yes.
We think so. Some Hindus doubt that, but we think that this is real. Okay. But to be holistic, to look at all of reality, the whole world, meaning all of reality, is not just physical, but also spiritual. Okay. So a worldview is ideally including everything, material, immaterial, heaven, earth, universe. So this word world means anything and everything, trying to have a view of everything. Right now in science, there is an effort by the leading scientists to have a theory. Anybody here have heard of that theory? Has heard of that theory? It's called a theory of everything. They want to explain by some formula how everything exists. Yeah, I saw a special on this recently. Maybe you saw it on TV. An excellent special on this theory, how the evolution of thinking has arrived at this struggle to find a theory to explain everything. But they're looking at it from a secular point of view. They're kind of ignoring this spiritual dimension. So we would say in a non-Christian way, good luck, which is really a non-Christian expression, but still, they're not going to find a theory for everything if they leave out the world of the Spirit. They leave out spirituality. But they're trying to find a theory for everything. So this class will actually give you a theory for everything, because we have God's Word. We have the Holy Spirit helping us to see really all the things that are part of reality, spirituality as well as physicality. So this class is looking at a view of the world, everything in reality, a world-sized view. But this next one is even more important, a world of views. Okay, this is a holistic view. Meaning of all things. Spirituality, physicality, and so forth. But the second view is even more helpful, I think, to our class. In this paragraph, under World of Views, in this long parenthesis, there are 3 italicized words. What are they?
Cultures. Views, cultures, and categories.
Okay, views, cultures, and categories. You might want to underline those for your test. Okay, a world of views. A world of views includes views. Earlier, one of the definitions earlier, it talks about other cultures' views and other categories of views. So here we have a real mixture of things. So look in your handout. Under views, we have Christian views, Hindu views, animistic views, naturalistic views, so forth and so on. Under cultures, we have, this is easy, American culture, Mexican culture, Polynesian culture, and cultures all have different views, different practices. Under categories, this is where your book by Noble, the thick book, has a lot to contribute. It does a good job of showing us a Christian view versus other views regarding theology, philosophy, sociology, ethics, psychology, ecology, economics, science, history, political science, law, business, media, entertainment, and so forth and so on. So are you getting the idea how big this topic is? It's huge. This is the biggest class you'll ever have, by definition. So again, look at that last section called category. Raise your hand if you took in college economics. A few of you, okay? Were you aware in that class, was it obvious in that class what the perspective of economics was? Or you just thought there was this one way to know that course, it's just the way it was taught. That is economics, there's no other way to do it. Is that what you thought, or was the class obviously showing you, well, here's one perspective of economics, here's another one? Raise your hand if you heard in the class or picked up on different ways of doing economics depending upon a person's worldview. You just had economics. So guess whose worldview you were getting? The professors, or the culture that you are part of. If you're in America, then you got the generic American worldview of economics. For example, in political science, what kind of government system will dominate the class in America? Yeah, democracy. So it could be that a person who takes political science in American college, it could be that all democracy, or at least mostly. So you might think that's the way government should be done. But I'll mention a few examples tonight coming up that's not necessarily the best way of government. We're kind of like brainwashed, if we're Americans, to think that's the only way, is democracy. But that's not the ideal government at all. So we'll look at that in a few minutes. Don't stone me yet. Give me a chance. But I can prove to you that by one person's perspective, democracy is not the ideal government. And sometimes even for us down here, it's not the ideal. It depends upon the culture. Which style works best. Anyway, those are the categories. When I was in college, I was not aware, when I took art, that there were different worldviews of art. I thought art was just art. And I'm sure those who took agriculture thought, again, farming's just farming. But there is a Christian way to farm, and there's a Buddhist way to farm. So worldviews should impact all those things. So now, have you ever heard the term Sunday Christian? Define for me the term Sunday Christian. What's a Sunday Christian? Okay, Christianity only makes a difference in their life on Sunday, right? That's a Sunday Christian. Because Monday through Saturday, it doesn't matter what they say they are, they don't act like a Christian, right? Okay, now, shouldn't we act like a Christian every day? How about at work? How about if you're a farmer? How about if you're a businessman or a lawyer? Okay, there you go. There is a Christian way, a biblical way to practice law, to do farming, to harvest lumber, and there's a non-Christian way. If we don't have a worldview for the workplace, then we're Sunday Christians. If we don't have a Christian view of shopping for groceries, there actually is a Christian view of shopping for groceries. That's part of a worldview. If we shop like everybody else shops, in the non-Christian way, then that means we're a Sunday Christian regarding shopping. Or, I could get kind of silly here, but the point is, we easily become Sunday Christians because we do farming and business and we go to our job. Our job's just a job, or whatever, and we don't realize that we're subconsciously buying into a non-Christian view of those things. But all these different categories should be done ideally in a Christian way, shouldn't they? Shouldn't we do things God's way? Regarding farming, regarding taking care of the animals, regarding population growth, regarding all kinds of categories. What does God want us to do with that category? What's the best way to do that? How can we be a better influence? So this is a big gap in our life, and we don't realize it. So this class really is quite practical. We're going to have some theoretical things that will kind of mess our mind up for a while, but the goal is to be practical, to be not a Sunday Christian, but to be a Christian. And of course, I know many of you are pastors, and you're always a Christian, not just Sunday. You're always in ministry, okay? But for your members, your church members, they need this. You can help them, your members, to know how to be a Christian in the workplace, in the school, if they're a student, if they're a coach.
Good Christian at church.
To be a Christian in all walks of life, to have a worldview. Because one more time, I'll ask us one more time. If we don't have a Christian view and practice in our job, such as economics or farming, then what will be the view of that place? It'll be a non-Christian view. It may be a terrible view, okay? But it'll be a non-Christian view. Do Christian views happen like gravity, just naturally?
No.
No, we're in a world that's fallen, so it takes effort to make things biblical or Christian, including farming, including legal work, including shopping for food. Okay, let me read to you a survey taken 10 years ago. As a teacher, I have to admit this is quite accurate, even in my own experience as a teacher. In 1996, there was a survey taken that was in relation to a survey taken 30 years before that. So you look in your handout, you can see it there. So they waited 30 years to do a follow-up of the same question of first-year American college students. And the question was, why are you studying? Why are you learning? Why are you here in college? Why are you enrolled in college? I find this difference quite illuminating. In 66, the most common answer was to develop a meaningful philosophy of life, or to have a meaningful worldview. That sounds like Mars now. It's like, wow, America really had that idea, 40 years ago? They went to college to learn about a philosophy of life? You mean they really cared about education? To learn things? And this is now, 2006, but 10 years ago it's the same as now. The main answer is to make money. Isn't that trivial? Am I the only person here who's depressed by that? That depresses me as a teacher. As a teacher, I obviously care about education. That's why I do what I do. But I'll have to admit that in my 22 years of teaching in Christian schools, Bible colleges and seminaries, there are students, maybe even in this room, I hope not, but there are Christian students at seminary who sometimes only want one thing.
That piece of paper.
That's right. Piece of paper.
That's right. They want paper.
With their name on it and the degree. That's just like saying, I'm only here for the money. I just want to get a piece of paper or some money. That's so shallow. It's so trivial. So if you have the temptation in your heart to be here because you just want a piece of paper with your name on it, with a master's or doctoral degree, whatever it is, if that's your main thing, and you don't really want to learn, you just want to kind of get by, get this thing over with, get your piece of paper, please reconsider.
Amen.
Please reconsider. Because even the secular person 40 years ago had a loftier ideal than that. So how much more should we have as Christians a better reason than just a piece of paper with our name on it with a fancy degree by it. So I would encourage us to have that 1966 view, that you're here to have a meaningful philosophy or theology of life, and to have a meaningful worldview as a result. That you would be more Christian or help your church to be more Christian in their workplace, in all the different categories. And they would know how other people think, and why there is such a difference of view in the world, and why we clash in practices and views, and all these. So this class is very practical, ultimately, in how to not be a Sunday Christian, but to make a difference in the workplace, in the school, the home, as well as ministry. Look at this next survey. What kind of a student are you, it says. In 92, a Gallup poll found out that only 10% of Americans had a theistic faith. It doesn't say Christian faith, it says theistic. Just kind of a general view of a divine being somewhere. Only 10% of Americans had a theistic faith of some kind of a blobby view of God somewhere, that had a tangible impact on their daily life. I think that's kind of a high figure myself. I'm surprised it's even 10%. Of course, that was 14 years ago. But it's a minority of people that their Christianity has an impact how they actually live in the daily world. So again, this class is meant to shape us and our churches into people who are not Sunday Christians, but they will be Christian or try to be Christian in every way they can. In law, in government, in ethics, economics, and so forth, including even farming. Okay, now look at this next quote. Here's a famous quote. I never heard of Alphonse Bertillon, but this is a very interesting quote. It's like a riddle. One can only see what one observes. Duh. That sounds obvious. But then it says, and one observes only things which are already in the mind. Now that's much more profound. Read it again. One can only see what one observes, and one observes only things which are already in the mind. I could give so many examples of this, and maybe you can too. I was in a class right here at this school 14 years ago. For those who don't know me, I've been a missionary for 22 years until recently. I was a missionary for 9 years in Micronesia, a bunch of small islands in the Western Pacific. And I was a missionary for 12 years in the Philippines, which is just west of Micronesia. A little bit bigger islands. But that part of the world is so strongly connected to the spiritual, to demons and angels and spiritual beings. That for them is more real and more important than the visible. So for them, the invisible is so important. Anyway, I came back in 92, about halfway through my missionary career, had a class here with American people who had never been outside the States, just typical 48-state American people, never been outside and had much exposure to other cultures. We had a class talking about the Bible and spirits. And there was a pastor there who said, the Bible says almost nothing about spirits. So let's change the topic. I want to have a topic to discuss that's more practical for my ministry and my church. I almost fell out of my chair. Now, if I had been in that chair 9 years earlier, I might have been saying the same thing. But because I had been to other parts of the world, the people there helped me to see that the Bible is full of verses about angels and demons and spiritual forces, Satan. It's everywhere. But you know what? I didn't see it very much before because my mind was materialistic oriented because of my culture. Though I was a Christian, I see what's already in my mind. And since my mind is so American before, with mostly materialistic kind of impressions, I would see these verses, but yet not see. You see? See my point? I'd be reading verses about demons and angels and spiritual powers, but yet I wouldn't really see it. Because my mind is kind of blocking what I really see. My mind, sees things that are materialistic. Those kind of jump off the page. But things that are spiritual, I kind of keep reading and look over it. But now, I look at the Bible, and my mind is more aware, because of where I've been living, of the spiritual dimension of life. It's like now I see it everywhere. Demons and spirits are all over these pages, because my mind is prepared to see them. You follow what I'm saying? I'll give you some more examples in a minute. Look at your handout. Here are some more examples to clarify this. Compare how different people in different cultures outwardly see the same things, but inwardly see or interpret them so differently. Well, let me give you an example I think will make it really, really clear to us and kind of meaningful for us as Americans. I don't want to have a fist fight about Iraq, okay, so I'm going to be very careful here. It's a very controversial topic, but I think this will get your attention. When we invaded Iraq in 2003, there are all kinds of reasons that have been given why we went there, okay? But regarding political science as a category, what is the reason given in terms of political science why we went to Iraq? Regarding political science, I'll clarify, regarding systems of government. Okay, we, Americans, think that they should be democratic. Okay? We think that'll be good for them. Okay? All right?
Good for us.
Now, and perhaps good for us. Why would a person favor democracy? That's what we are. Okay? So we have that in our mind. Okay? So we have democracy in our mind from childbirth almost. You live in America, it just kind of comes in because of the culture. Democracy, democracy, democracy. Okay? So when we see things somewhere else that are not democratic, how do we evaluate them? It's less. It's worse than. Maybe it's even bad. Okay? It's a bad thing, so we want to give them democracy. Okay? So I mentioned earlier that in the Scripture, what is the ideal government? Theocracy. Okay? Now that sounds like Islamic, but so be it. It's true. Theocracy is the ideal form. Of course, not the Islamic kind. We think it's the Christian kind that's better. But that's just an example that democracy is not the ideal. And in the book of Acts, chapter 2, is it? Yeah, chapter 2. What is the early church form of government, if you will, in the early church? Communism. Communism, where they shared things as each had need. Okay? So I would say ideally, even communism is better than democracy. Ideally. Now, one of the values of democracy is it works in a fallen world somewhat better than other things. But ideally, communism and or dictatorship or theocracy is actually better than democracy. But, I've been in cultures where dictatorships actually work better than democracy. Much of the world has a tribal culture. What do tribes have? A chief. If the chief is a good chief, a benevolent chief, things work very well. Now the Philippines is really a tribal culture, but foreign powers made them democratic. Guess what happens? On the surface, it's democratic. But what is it really beneath the surface? It's still tribal. It's still a chief system. So you have this very awkward thing going on. You have people who are really tribal, really chief system oriented, but they're trying to be democratic, and it doesn't work. You can't mix those two together very easily. So there's all kinds of frustration and confusion and chaos there because you have two systems that don't fit together. But the foreign powers thought they should have democracy. So we may have the same thing happen in Iraq, because Iraq's also a tribal-type culture. And yes, Saddam was not benevolent, but he was a chief. And they operate with the chief better than without, because without they have this civil war-type conflict. So it may end up being a long-term frustration in Iraq, like it has been in the Philippines since democracy was given to them. So not all cultures work as well as ours does with democracy, because of the underlying worldview is still something else. So that's part of this quote here. One can only see what one observes, but one observes only things which are already in the mind. If the mind is already democratic, you're going to see democratic is the ideal, and not see the good in other kinds of government systems. Now here's kind of a humorous one. I'm giving a couple of humorous examples here to make this quote even more meaningful. RP, it says compare RP. RP means Republic of the Philippines. Republic of the Philippines. I had this experience in '94. I was at a church planting meeting. I was part of a steering committee for a church plant in Manila. And I was clueless about the culture at that point. We had a meeting to discuss this church plant idea. At the end of the meeting, everybody raised their hand in favor of going ahead and having the church plant. Really happy. And I was walking back home with the leader of the meeting. I said, wow, isn't that great? They all raised their hands. Yes, we're in favor of the church plant. And he went, poor guy, poor clueless American. No. They're not in favor. Why are they not in favor? Their hand. They all said yes. Can you guess why they weren't in favor? In American culture, how do you show approval? Raise your hand, or you say yes. Okay? They don't do that there. You see, once again, when America has imposed our way on somebody else, they do it sometimes because it's imposed on them, but it doesn't work. That's not how you communicate in Philippine culture, by raising your hand or saying yes. They communicate by body language and tone of voice. So if you raise your hand, but you're really like this, and your face is like this, you know, it means no, you know. Or if you say yes, you know, doesn't mean yes. Okay? So he read the clues, and I was clueless, and so they did not say yes. So there again is a worldview going on, and a way of thinking. Now notice this is historic. In 1492, when so-called Columbus discovered America, which I find hilarious now, discovered America. America had millions of people, and yet he discovered it. After millions had been here for centuries, he discovered it. Now, what does that phrase tell you when the history books say, Columbus discovered America? What kind of a worldview is going on there? European, and to be more critical, what else is going on there?
The authority determined.
Isn't this kind of a chauvinistic worldview? Why would they say, we discovered this? And they also say, like it says here, and I hereby claim this land in honor of the King of Spain. And people are going, hello? We're humans also. We're here first. We've been here for thousands of years. We have villages and cities here. What does that show us? The worldview. Who's better than who? Obviously. Europeans, Spanish are better than the locals.
Indigenous people.
They don't count.
Right.
This is our land now. We claim this land. Okay, now I want to reverse the tables here. Look at the next line. Here's my little reversing of the tables. Imagine now, 2006, Indians from someplace else land on Manhattan Island. People are in their business suits going to Wall Street to work with their briefcases.
Wow.
They get out of their canoe. They put their flag in the ground and say, we now claim this land to be Indian land in honor of our chief Indian. You know?
Geronimo.
And of course the guy in the business suit and the briefcase is going, hello, excuse me, Manhattan, downtown, skyscrapers, Americans, hello, we're here already, we have a culture.
Stars and stripes.
You know, now it sounds weird to us, but back then, you know, it didn't sound weird to the Europeans to do it in reverse. So you have a strange worldview going on there. You know, everywhere in history you have a strange or a good worldview in operation. Behind the scene is a worldview that's guiding them. And the Europeans thought, you don't count. Why didn't they count?
They couldn't stand up for themselves.
They didn't have these things called guns. But think about that. Why does a piece of wood with a metal rod that goes boom and makes a piece of metal fly through the air, why does that make you better than someone else?
Power.
Yeah, and now this is the bully worldview now. Bully worldview. I was a short kid in school, so I experienced the short end of the bully view that, you know, when you have a stronger right arm, then they're better than you. Now, did you try this? If you're like me, here was my plan to change the worldview. It failed, but here's my plan. When I was being chased by bullies, I said to one guy one day, I said, let's race. Whoever runs the fastest wins the argument, not whoever hits the hardest. It's still a silly worldview. Why does racing faster make you better? But that was my way of not getting pounded. But I lost. He pounded me. But what kind of a worldview is it, and this is an historic one, what kind of a worldview is it that because you're stronger physically or have a better, shinier instrument for killing, if you have that, they don't, why does that make you better? But that's the worldview. It made them better, so those guys didn't count. This is now our land, King of Spain, we're here, you're not. So of course, and I know many of you in this room, African American, you didn't count. Because you come from Africa before. You have different colored skin. You don't count. You're not good enough. You're only good enough to be slaves. That's a chauvinistic worldview. White's better than black. What kind of a worldview is that? Why not the other way around? Why isn't black better than white? In the sun, it is better. Right now, you guys are winning, we're losing. We're getting skin cancer and sunburns. It's payback. Okay. All right, now there are three more definitions. Look at your handout. Here are three more definitions of worldview. These are from your textbooks, and these are also good for a test. So here's a clue for your test. Also know these three definitions. How's the time going, Allison? Keep going. Okay, number three. Here's the third definition. Worldview. For your test, if you know this. A set of presuppositions. That means assumption. Assumptions. Which may be true, partially true, or entirely false. Which we hold, nonetheless, consciously or subconsciously, consistently or inconsistently, about the basic makeup of our world or reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the Europeans had an assumption. We have big ships, we have big guns. Those guys are not wearing much clothing. They look different than us, and they look like they're weaker. They don't have guns, so we're better than they are. It's an assumption, a presupposition. Next definition. Worldview is any ideology, philosophy, theology, movement, or religion that provides an overarching approach. So here's that holistic view of all things, a theory of all things, to understanding God, or gods, which is ultimate reality, and the world, which is immediate reality, and humankind's relation to God and the world. And the last one, I think this is a better one in my opinion of these three. I like this third one. Worldview, number 5, is a worldview is a way of viewing or interpreting all of reality It is an interpretive framework through which or by which one makes sense out of the data of life and the world. It's like my glasses. Worldview is like glasses, but they're invisible. They're in the mind. All of our minds have these kinds of glasses. And so these glasses might be sunglasses, they might be, red-colored glasses, rose-colored, they might be striped, they might be trifocal, bifocal, different kinds of glasses, different kind of worldviews. And then you see things, like that earlier quote, you see things differently because your mind is guiding you. These unseen glasses in your brain are guiding how you see things. So the Europeans saw those guys on the island and said, oh, they're inferior. Because the inward glasses were distorting their view of those people. We'll have another handout shortly that gives a similar definition to this one. That will clarify it even further. I have in one of the handouts a series of dots. So I'll do it now. Here's a little bit of an advance on your next handout. Here's a series of dots. Can I have a volunteer? What do you see there? Whether it's there or you can connect the dots. Anybody see anything there? You see triangle?
I mean rectangle. Triangle.
Rectangle.
Four arrows. X's.
Do some of you see a rectangle? Or do some of you see like dice? I don't know. Like there's a one dice. And maybe some of you did this in your mind is more of a diagonal view. Or maybe you're thinking just freckles. It's kind of like the... now, Pat's gone. Is Pat a psychologist?
No, chaplain.
Chaplain, okay. But, people who are psychologists or psychiatrists, they'll give people these tests that are kind of like that, and they'll say, what do you see? And then they kind of judge what you are by how you see things. But this also works in terms of worldviews, because we all see different things with that. Some of us just see black dots on a board. In some cultures, that might be a sacred symbol that would scare them. Like, we have this, for example, is an important symbol for us. In the Philippines, you know what that is? It's a sacred mark to keep away vampires for some people, or things like vampires. It's a protection. It has power. So some people, when they see this, now what do you see when you see that? What comes to your mind? And that means Jesus Christ, okay? Reminds you of Jesus Christ, okay? Other people, like I just said, those are marks that have power, that keep away vampires at night. Other people who never heard of Christ or vampires, just a couple of abstract marks on a board. Means nothing. Somebody else might think, that's a symbol of what we say here, northwest, northeast, like a compass, southwest, southeast. Might be for them like a compass symbol. So we all see different things with marks on a board, because we have a worldview is kind of shaping how we see things. That's the illustration behind that. So we'll come back after our camera break and continue.